All right. I think we're live. I hate the delay. Yes, we are live. Hi, welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law. With me today is Ethan Van Sciver, Ceasar, the Papa of Pie, all sorts of names. He is become the face of Comicsgate in many ways, even though it is a faceless movement. And he will be faceless today other than an icon. And another faceless chap with me today is Thomas Roiloup. Roiloup. I still can't get the French down. Thomas
it's
was
still that.
What was that?
It's still that.
Still that. Okay.
Pretty much.
Thomas was the former owner of a Tumblr blog called well, I'll let Thomas say it since I am not allowed to use profanity.
You're not allowed. Well, it was called Sh y Webcomics.
Yes, and that Tumblr blog was thrown off of the internet. If you want the backstory on that, do go check out my interview with him, even though it is pretty much eternal. But welcome to it. Thomas has been openly critical about Comicsgate. Ethan, of course, is openly critical about the comics industry. And we're going to have some debate, some discussion, and we're going to see what these guys' opinions are on what to do with this industry. And as a quick preface to that, Comicsgate is still doing, of course, Indiegogo. Comicsgate Live, Ethan's show, is promoting the Indiegogo, which promotes physical books of comics artists who have kind of gone away from the industry or been kicked out of the industry or shuffled off, however you want to look at it. And they are still doing print media. Thomas has been an advocate of web media, web-based comics, for quite a long time and thinks the print media industry is dying. So with that, gentlemen, I open the floor.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Yeah. What are we doing? Are you asking us questions, or are we, what's the format of this, Nick?
Yeah, Nick, do you have questions for either of us to at least to kick it off?
I do have questions, and I'm going to start with a neutral question. Let me get it here. It's No. This is when I say it's a neutral question, it's a question both of you might have insight on, but it has to do with the media question or the media topic I was bringing up. This is submitted to me by a friend of mine. He said, I would like to know why Marvel doesn't publish digital comic sales, since they claim that's what the kids do these days. And I would like to know, I also want to know those numbers minus the free digital download codes they put in their comics. So do you guys have opinions? Ethan, you were in the industry, not with Marvel, but of course with DC. Do these guys know their digital download numbers? They've been talking about that they don't have access to that because, it's 2018, so they wouldn't have any way to find that out. But what's up with that?
I couldn't tell you. Now, I always thought digital was the future. I really did. I started to download Walking Dead rather than purchase the physical. That's the only book. In fact, that's the only book that I treat like a newspaper because it comes out so frequently. It's such a quick read. You don't need to read it again. So I think that's the kind of digital format is the appropriate format for that kind of a book. Now, when it comes to how well digital sales are doing, it's hard to say. Yeah, it's frustrating that people aren't letting you know. At this point, all I have to go on is my royalty statement, and my royalty statement actually blends the physical copies sold with those digital copies so that you don't know. You just end up getting kind of, a figure thrown at you. Sure. I understand, and I was of the belief that digital was probably doing better and better, but it turns out that in the last year, it's declined by 10%, which is worrisome. People were suggesting that digital was going to be the future. That's sketchy right now. I still wouldn't count it out. I still think it's pretty valuable. But people do still seem in this tiny little hobby to prefer holding the book in their hands.
The tiny hobby being the Marvel and DC side, though, right?
No, the entire comic book industry is still very small, at least in the United States. It is still relatively small. It isn't
including
video games.
Webcomics, or do webcomics not count?
No, I would include webcomics in that as well, and still suggest that comics and the industry of comics is still very much smaller than Hollywood and video games.
Well, definitely smaller than video games. Hollywood's smaller than video games at this point, or definitely on the downswing.
Well, we see where things are going.
To take them over.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get into some of the criticisms Thomas has had, because I think this leads naturally into that. Thomas has been critical of Comicsgate for largely pursuing physical books and physical print media. Ethan, you just mentioned you think that people still like to hold a book in their hand. I think there's some merit to that, but I also see some merit with what Thomas is saying. So Thomas, do you want to levy some accusations?
I almost feel like it's early for that. I don't want to ever say it's too early.
Yeah, do it.
But as far as because we were talking about last time in that giant, overlong, painful to listen to stream, the idea of comics itself is not a business; it's a medium. It's an art first, and then the business is only the part that makes money. So if you discount the parts that only make money, I think we're both a little sort of frizzed today. I might be too sober for this right now, but
we'll start drinking.
You know what? That might not be a bad idea.
Well, Thomas, are Marvel and DC in the art business or the business?
That's what I think.
That's right.
As far as they're in the comics business, but they're pretty much on the way out at this point. The only reason they exist is to own the properties of the characters so they can be sold off for movies or video games at this point.
Sure. So with that, you know, and that was one of the thoughts I was having is as Comicsgate moves forward, right? And you guys, without question, are revolutionizing how independent comics are funded and delivered to fans. I mean, Ethan, you just announced the launch of All Caps, right? I think is the name of your imprint, which is basically because they're despite my argument with some rando on Twitter, who assured me that there is no gatekeeping in comics. You, who is a comic book veteran, had to create an imprint to get past the gatekeeper of comics, which is basically Diamond Publishing, if I understand. My industry knowledge is still fledgling, so bear with me if I get something wrong, and please correct me if I am. But Diamond is basically the key to distribution to traditional comic book shops, and if you don't have some sort of imprint publishing arm, then you don't get a distribution channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I don't think that it would be necessary that I create a whole imprint in order to get distribution through Diamond. I could just call up Diamond and say, "Hey, I'm Ethan Van Sciver. You know me. You've sold my books for years. I'm just going to put out this one single issue of Cyberfrog. That's all. Just one issue. I'll just call it Ethan Comics and put it out through you." And they would say, "Okay." Sure. It's not necessary. The reason why I have an imprint is because I plan on doing more. And I plan on actually tying in, or bringing in other creators to work on my properties with me, on my own properties. Right. So All Caps Comics it's within Comicsgate, but it's not Comicsgate. It's just Ethan Van Sciver Comics. All of my ideas, hiring other people to come in and work on them for a page rate. It's just typical. It's an imprint. But the advantage that Comicsgate offers over, say, a new startup company, like one of these guys who just kind of emerges out of the blue with 8 new comics to offer, with sometimes named talent, sometimes not, is that with Comicsgate, these properties are going to be tried and tested through crowdfunding. Gotcha. Cyberfrog people are already hearing about. Everybody knows about Cyberfrog now. So now that it's been tested, now that retailers have heard of it, they know that there's a demand for it. I can put it out through an imprint and actually just relaunch it that way through the direct market. And get better results. Comicsgate almost advertises these books before they're even offered to the direct market, which is, I think, a helpful thing. I kind of see it at this point as the Comicsgate Indiegogo campaigns that we do are kind of like red carpet premieres of new properties, of new comics. So when you're paying $25 for Cyberfrog Blood Honey #1, what you're paying for is an elite version. It's going to have a chromium cover. It's going to be autographed. It's going to have a spine. It's 48 pages. It's going to be thick. It's going to be a nice prop, a nice piece of property that's going to be headed your way. Now, if you wait a little while, if you want to just go see the movie in the theater next week, then you can do that. You're going to get a different version of the book. Or if you want to wait until it comes out on Blu-ray DVD, you're going to get another version of the book. It's going to be 20 pages long. It's not going to have the special cover. It's not going to be signed, but it's going to be a lot cheaper. And if you want to wait a little bit further, as though you were waiting for the same movie to come out on basic cable, you're going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to get it digitally. But we roll them out all kind of in succession that way, rather than all at once. So if you buy in earlier, you have the advantage of a nicer nicer piece of artwork. You have my signature on it. And it's got a nicer chromium cover. It's just a more expensive, better experience in reading the same story. I like that. Yeah, I promised chromium initially. I'm going to see what these printers can offer me, because obviously Rainbow Brute is the next comic book that I'm rolling out through Indiegogo, and we want a prismatic cover on that, don't we? It only makes sense.
Is it made out of actual prisms?
It'll have prisms on it, Thomas. It'll actually refract light.
Can you blind people with it?
I think people. I think that would be counterproductive for a comic book. I hope not.
So one thing I do need to do to kind of keep some things, keep on top of things on my end, is go through a couple quick super chats. But I wanna get back, because Thomas has been critical of the print medium, and I want him to talk about what he thinks about that in just a second. But first, Steven Severin says, congrats on 8K subs. Thank you so much. That happened this morning or late last night.
That's great. Congrats.
Thank you. Lucifer Love Monkey says, how are we doing tonight, Nick? I am great. Ryan English Twice says, let's start with physical versus digital, which is what we're getting into now. And Gojirify asks, is Robbie here?
Yes.
And Robbie is here. Oh, Robbie Rectum is here. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if he's here. Probably.
I hope so. But okay, Thomas. So let's hear.
Well, before the point, I mean, after that agonizingly long commercial, I might as well shill for my comic also. It's called Literally. So if you just go to igg.me/@/literally-comic, or if you just go to indiegogo.com and search for the word literally, it's the second result. The first result is Thick Strip, which is about a couple of fat whores stripping. And apparently that's more relevant to the word literally, if you actually search it, than literally the comic, literally.
Gotcha.
But I recommend it, and I can't believe that Ethan said that it was better than Cyberfrog.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, Thomas. I mean, it might be.
That's why I said I can't believe it.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't believe it. And also, that sounds very complicated. I think you need just a quick link and a quick way for people to find that.
The below bar.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll have links to Cyberfrog and Literally down in the description for sure.
The IGG me one is the short link. I mean, I didn't read out the really, really long version with all of the X and the numbers. I don't know why Indiegogo adds that to URLs.
But anyway, so talk about you have been like I said, a vocal proponent of the web format versus the print format. And your book, your comic will be a web-based comic. That's correct?
Well, it'll be digital. It's not going to just go on a website. It'll just plan to either mail out a PDF to the backers or some kind of file. Sure.
So we talked about this a little on stream, but what do you think about the way Comicsgate is promoting? I mean, Ethan just laid out a very cogent business plan, basically, for how they're going to distribute content at different price points, different tiers of fanship. It seems well planned out. It follows a lot of different models. I mean, you obviously analogized it to the movie model. What's your opinion?
We don't really disagree on that. I'm all for the whole crowdfunding attempt. I think that's what should have been done years ago. In fact, I thought so when Social Justice was doing it with their own comics back in 2012, and they were making a lot of money, probably more than Cyberfrog has. As far as the follow-up to that, because I guess you can't, keep doing an Indiegogo every time you want to make a comic. So there has to definitely be a plan after that. If the plan's to set up some kind of line that you can sell to the direct market, that's fine. But the cost of paper, the cost of ink, that's a lot of money that you save by not going with the entire print option if you just make it digital. And you can do both if you have the money. It's just an issue of money. So for up and coming, the new creator, the non-boomer creator, if you will, they have a better option with digital because they're starting off. They don't need to publish with print. They just are interested in getting their comic seen. Mm-hmm. And the best introductory way to do that is to just make it and put it on a website, post it to even Twitter at this point. But that's the easiest way. Now that's free though. In order to make money, you then have to set up a Patreon. And it's a very weird business model, and it's in a kind of a flux state where Patreon might go away, and people will have all these options to avoid Patreon, reasons to avoid Patreon, to avoid having Patreon shut them down for whatever it is they're making, because the digital market doesn't have to be beholden to Diamond saying, hey, we'll ship your book. They don't have to say that at all. But if you want to make money, Patreon does have to say, yes, we'll let you get your money. And there's been a lot of artists lately who have had problems with that. And I've seen people trying to make alternatives to Patreon, like Patreon, and maker support and that kind of thing. And then Ko-fi, people have used that too. So yeah, as far as the actual digital market itself, the business part of it, that is in a really weird in-between area right now. But as far as just getting people to see your comics, again, the easiest way is you draw it and post it.
Okay, so, whoa, there's an echo. I don't know that that's the best way to do things. Ethan, do you have a response to that? Because it seems like you guys have not been following that model. Just make it and post it. It seems like you've been, and what you described to me in our interview was that you start building a network of people, and you start treating them well, and basically offering what I would consider just a model of excellent customer service and fan interaction. But you can describe it better, certainly.
Well, I don't know what Thomas means. Thomas is first of all, I just have to establish for myself what he's after. You're just out to get your book seen. That's your thing. Here's the thing. When
yes.
Okay. We're on two different spheres. When I was starting out in comics in the 1990s, of course, the web just didn't exist in the early 90s. And certainly webcomics didn't. And so the way to break in was to find a small press publisher who would publish your work for you. And you would start at the very bottom and work your way up. Getting your work seen is now 100,000 times easier. Thomas is quite right. Getting your work seen is great. That is the way to do it. And also, when you're starting from the ground up the way that he is, you do have to kind of find yourself, a place to display your artwork and gain a fan following. Now, it's much easier for me after 25 years in the business I already have a following. And I can build my following even bigger by just, working on a YouTube channel and, creating an audience. And that's basically what I've done. Now, as for digital, I think it's the last stop on the train. When you're talking about the cost of paper, I think the cost of paper is actually,
it went up this year.
Yeah, but it's not something that we're worried about. I think the cost of actually producing the content itself is significantly higher than just the cost of production. A comic book costs less than $1 for the most part to produce, and even
It
a
depends on if
specialty
you're
item.
making a book, though. If you're not making a book, a physical book, if you're just making pages yourself, then that's technically no cost. If you're one person, that's one of the best things about comics, is that you don't need a team. You don't need a team. You can use a team, but you don't need a team to make comics. A comic can be made by just anyone at all.
Tom, your time is money. You understand? It does cost money for me, even though I'm not paying myself per
the
se
time part, yes.
to produce a comic book. My time is money, and so when I sit down and produce a page of artwork, it inevitably is going to cost me money.
For you, yes.
Because I could be doing something else. For you too. You could be doing anything else to make money. Instead, you're spending that time producing a comic book page. So it does cost
not
you
just
money.
me. A lot of people are doing it. That's where webcomics came from in the first place. People were mostly doing it just for free to post, and then they tried to make money off of it afterwards. And the business is coming up to help them do that. That's where Patreon's really coming from. I've seen a lot of webcomic artists start to make a lot of money through Patreon just by making their comic and getting sort of fan donations to continue to pay for it.
I'm not following the argument. Nick, are you following the argument? Do you know where we disagree, or what the...
It's not necessarily disagreement. It's just, this is how I see the new form of the comics industry. It's going away from print because it's easier to make it, put it out there, and for people to get it through digital. The print option is more arduous. It's not necessarily more expensive, but it's a lot more work. And then, having to take your books and physically ship them to a person. That's work, that's oil, that's paper, that's ink, as opposed to digital, which is none of those things.
Okay, but let's I see what you're saying, that if I can summarize, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, sure, the Ethan's model is great for a guy like Ethan, someone with an audience, someone with a fan base who can create this work, who can market it, and who can put it out and make a ton of money, like Cyberfrog, or there's any other number of Comicsgate creators who have done very, very well on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and GoFundMe and stuff like that. But a guy in your situation, for example, who doesn't
not even in my situation necessarily, in a lot of situations of just people making digital or web-based comics.
Right. So the person making digital web-based comics needs to, it sounds like your criticism is really with the business model that hasn't been fleshed out for that. But what I want to do is I want to bring that back to Comicsgate. So how does, because like I said, you've been critical of Comicsgate, and basically, if I can paraphrase, being gate kept out. I think one of the first messages you sent me was that there are gatekeepers in Comicsgate, even though they're supposed to be opposed to gatekeeping. So let's get into that issue, because I think that's what's interesting here is you're talking webcomics, you're talking about not having new people starting out, not having the same platform. How does this interrelate to Comicsgate? Is Comicsgate failing these creators? Do these creators need to pursue something different? Like, what is the criticism? That's what I'm looking for here.
Well, I think those creators, in their own ways, from what I see, they're having their own success without Comicsgate and without even the contemplation of a print option. They're just making their comic, and then they get the funding through Patreon or commissions or whatever it is that they make money on. And some of them make a lot more money for a worse product, and some of them make less money or no money for something that gets halfway around the world immediately. But as far as the gatekeeping thing, that accusation does get thrown around a lot. In fact, that got thrown at Ethan, which I thought was wrong, actually. In his case, because I forgot what it was he said. I think he was talking about how politics. Ethan, you said that you think that comics should have less politics or no politics in the actual content, right?
I said that I believe comic books should be apolitical and appeal to the widest possible audience. I am out to create comic books that are can be enjoyed by everyone, If there are politics, they should be subtle. They should be ambiguous in some ways. They, you know, just the same way Captain America's politics are ambiguous. Captain America represents America. Whatever America means to you is whatever's good
Not
about
really
America.
ambiguous, though.
No, it is. It is very ambiguous. Whatever America means to you, whatever is good about America to you, and we might disagree, is what Captain America represents to each of us. And the minute you have Captain America take, you know, some kind of partisan, you know, decision stance on some, you know, issue that's going on in the United States, is the second that you ostracize 50% of the readership.
But he's
so
pro-America,
that is,
though. People will say because he's pro-America, that's inherently political, whether he
What's his name?
voices any political view or not.
His name's Captain America. Of course, he's pro-America. Yeah. Nobody has a problem with that. The question is, what does it mean to be pro-America?
That, though.
No, nobody picking up Captain America has a problem with him being pro-America.
Well, not yet. Not buying it. But still, people will. That's, you know, where a lot of complaints will come in. Oh, he's too pro-America, and so they accuse the comic of being political, and then they say that he shouldn't therefore have a comic, or he shouldn't be pro-America in the comic. And then people wrote Captain America comics where he's not pro-American and trying to make him as anti-America as possible.
Okay, well, that's partisan, and that is why that is a problem.
Yeah, that's
Captain America. Okay, so anyone who buys a Captain America book does so under the assumption. I mean, even people in other countries. The guy's name is Captain America. His job is to be pro-American. The question is, what does it mean to be pro-American? And it's important to keep that as ambiguous as possible, so that people who disagree about what they think is wonderful about America are not put off by the comic. Why? Because we're trying to sell as many copies of this comic book as possible, and we're trying to make people have a good time and feel good as they're reading it, not be put off, not be disappointed, not be soured by the experience. So that's why Captain America is an apolitical book, because it's neutral. You know, if you are purchasing this book understanding that, of course, it is pro-America, quote unquote, that is ultimately meaningless. It just depends on what pro-America means. Keeping that kind of open to interpretation is why that book
that's political, though. The pro-America part, people can easily say that's still heavily
political. Okay, let's replace the word political with partisan. How's that? Does that make you happier? I don't want these books partisan.
Yeah. So this and this is where my job comes in. I want to focus back, though, on how this relates to Comicsgate, because Thomas, you had accusations against Comicsgate. You had criticisms of Ethan. That's what I think people are here to see. That's what I think is interesting. I mean, there was some hype, and sure,
I wish I had more criticisms of Ethan right now. I actually didn't have as much as I did for other people, I guess.
Well, other people in
the thing we were
Comicsgate,
talking about the gatekeeping is that people accused him of gatekeeping because he said that comics should be less political, and I thought that was stupid that people said that about Ethan, because it's his idea, it's his opinion, and if he wants his comics to be apolitical, or if he thinks comics should be apolitical, that's how he feels. So it doesn't matter, and that doesn't keep anyone out of comics.
Right. So let's move past that then, and let's get into the criticisms of Comicsgate that you have, because that's why we're here, right?
I guess
so. So let's put it out there. We've had enough teasing. Put it out there. What are the criticisms of Comicsgate? Because you've got the guy, to answer those criticisms. You've got the audience to answer those criticisms. So
I don't think I have anyone to answer those criticisms. I mean, first of all, have you looked at the name of it? It's called Comicsgate. Fucking stupid. Did anyone stop to think for even a second? Can we call it anything else? I did. I thought about this in 2015. I was like, you know what? First thing, if you're going to do a Comicsgate for comics, first thing you should do, just think of something else to call it. The gate suffix implies a scandal. If you're going to wait for a scandal, it's already too late. And then it was. But also in 2015, there was a scandal. Somebody in comics was censored, but she made digital comics. She made a webcomic. So Comicsgate didn't really give a shit. Not until like this month. And then that brings us to what we were talking about in the last stream was the honey badgers. That's when that happened. And when it happened, we were the first people to say, okay, this is where Comicsgate should start. If there's going to be a Comicsgate, come up with some other name, and then this is the first cause. This would be the first operation. Support them. The money badgers, whatever. They still deserve support because they are in comics. The Allison Tiemann is in comics. She makes comics, regardless of if it's not print, which she did have them printed, but it was a webcomic first, and she had it printed, and then they kicked her out before she could even sell them because she disagreed with the feminists. She was deplatformed, and that's where it should have started. And instead, nothing happened.
Okay, so before I have Ethan respond, I want to be clear. I want to be clear that the "they" in this case was the Calgary Comics Expo, not Comicsgate, which you're alleging didn't exist.
Well, also Comicsgate. There was no Comicsgate sprang up when it should have. That was a big event. It was public. It was very well known, and then again, it was just sort of they got most of their support from Gamergate. And it's like, why are the video game players caring more about comics than the comics people are?
All right. So, Ethan, do you have a response to that? In summary of the criticisms, the name Comicsgate is stupid. And
that's a good criticism, by the way. That's definitely a good starter.
And then the other criticism would be that basically Comicsgate should have started earlier. Where was everybody back in 2015? If you could,
they were at home washing their tights.
Okay. Well, Comicsgate was not a label that we chose. It was a label that was applied to us.
You can choose it all you want, though.
Thomas, let me respond. Did you notice how I was courteous and I let you talk until it was my turn?
Oh.
Okay. Thank you. Comicsgate was not a label that we chose. It was a label that was actually thrust upon us. And labels are both very important and then also simultaneously not important at all. It doesn't matter what you call this movement. The words that you use don't really mean anything. After all, social justice warriors applied that term. Far leftists called themselves social justice warriors for years until their behavior under that label made the term SJW toxic and something that they now decry and call a slur. Well, it's only a slur because of their behavior, because they behaved a certain way publicly where people could see them while calling themselves social justice warriors. That is why that's not a nice word anymore. Now, you can call us Comicsgate if you want, and I understand that gate is based on Watergate and it implies scandal, but how we behave under that term and what we do, what we offer people, and how our end results will make that word mean something else. Now, if we chose to call ourselves Huggy Bunch and the Sunshine Crew instead of Comicsgate, those same people would just say, fuck that, you're just Comicsgate. Stop trying to pretend you're not Comicsgate. Under these circumstances, then, it makes sense to just embrace the term Comicsgate and say, this is who we are. What does it mean? It means this is a gateway to comics. This is a way to get into comics through us. It's an easy avenue. We've made it mean something else. This is a way that people who are talented, who haven't quite yet been able to break into the big two, can break into comics, make a lot of money, get a start, get a lot of exposure. That's what Comicsgate provides for them. And we have standards. We have attitudes. We believe that comics should be apolitical. We believe, in order to be a part of Comicsgate, you should say my comics are apolitical. And I have tremendous respect for the fans. They are not just fans; they are our customers. And I'm going to produce work based on what I believe they are looking for. I'm going to listen to them. Now, those are basically the only two things that you need to do to work within Comicsgate. It has nothing to do with diversity or any of these other things that they kind of place upon us. Those are all lies. Of course, everybody who works within Comicsgate is tremendously diverse. We have women, we have people of color. I think we have some LGBTQ people now, which is pretty exciting. We're open. We're open to whoever wants to come over here and just say, we want to make a lot of money breaking into comics, creating a product that everybody wants.
What if they want to make political comics, though?
They don't belong here. There are any other number of places that they can go to make propaganda comics. That's not what we do.
Does that include Timothy Lim?
Yeah, it does. It does include Timothy Lim. We've had quite a few arguments about that, but Timothy Lim is doing a bunch of other stuff as well.
He doesn't have a
I'm not thrilled. I have said I've said I am not crazy about the Trump comics. I was told as a rejoinder, these are neutral Trump comics. They make fun of him as much as they praise him. That's not what I think Comicsgate is or should be. But Timothy Lim is a valuable member of the community, and there you go.
Well, I'm not going to say Comicsgate has to be about that. It doesn't have to be political. It doesn't have to be anything it doesn't want to. But I would rather read Timothy Lim's comics.
Great. Go read his comics.
I do.
I was going to say I don't think that and maybe I'm mistaken, or maybe I've got star eyes or something, but I don't think Comicsgate is saying don't read these other people's comics. And if I'm wrong, maybe that's a question that I want to get to.
No, they're not. They're not saying that.
Okay, good. But that still leads to a question I want to get to. But yeah, so no one's saying don't read these people's comics, but Comicsgate, for better or worse, whatever you think of the name, has become a thing. It's a movement of sorts, and that movement has taken on an identity. Is there a problem with having that identity?
You know what? As far as I know, it's not the identity that I would even have a problem with. If their goal is to support comics, over the internet through crowdfunding or whatever means to get printed, then, go for that. I'm all in favor of people trying to make and purchase the comics that they want to see. And it's working very well, obviously. It's making a lot of money. But I think most of that money is based on the promise of some sort of combat against social justice in comics.
No, it's just it's an ethical alternative to social justice in comics. That's all it is. I mean, we're not saying we are going to fight social justice warriors in comics, not at all, unless competition is fighting social justice. I
don't think that you're saying that. I think that people who are giving money for the promise of that. They're hoping for that in some way.
Well, that is voting with your wallet. I support that idea. I think that's a great idea.
If for that too, but I also think that most people have already left to read other comics instead.
I don't know what we're disagreeing about, really. I'm not sure what we're
okay.
Maybe not anything specific. It's kind of abstract, I think.
Let me take a quick break. I've got 3 super chats to read through real quick, and then the third super chat has an interesting bit in there that I'll let you guys comment on. So Tillip says, "Grats, Nick, on hitting 8K subs. It's been a wild year." Tillip is the guy who does my thumbnails, by the way. Could we hear these two say something they admire about each other?
I don't know him. What do I admire about him? I think he's got balls. As they say in Jersey, he's got balls. But I don't know much about him.
Sure.
I think that what Ethan's doing with Indiegogo, going for crowdfunding to make comics, is a good thing. I think that's what comics in general should be doing. Comicsgate or new creators or even veterans.
All right. So then Custom Songmaker says video game corporations wanted to go all digital to nix used resells that don't pay them, but new purchases are subsidized by used buyers. People won't invest if they can't resell. For comics times 10. So he's disagreeing with you, Thomas, in saying that if people can't resell their comics, they're not going to buy them.
Well, I guess they don't have to, but I think most of that doesn't matter. I mean, with the games market, a lot of it has gone digital already because it's easier. And so as far as comics go, the standard for quality is just different, lower really, than they are for video games. So yeah, it's easier to say, well, what if I buy this comic digitally and it's terrible? Well, ideally, you don't spend that much money on the comic if you are taking a chance on it. And that has happened to me. I've bought some digital comics like, oh, I hope this is good. And I was like, maybe the first issue is good. And the second issue, oh, it's still good. And then the third issue is like, oh, wait, this is terrible. And then I'm like, well, I just wasted my money. So yeah, but I mean, is comics really the kind of refund business that you need to get refunds from? I don't know. For me, no. But for other people, maybe. So what I think doesn't apply to everyone else.
honestly, you want to give people the biggest, as many alternatives as possible, and that's the thing. I mean, just like the movie business, you want to give them the premiere version, you want to give them the regular version, you want to give them the digital version, and then eventually you want to collect them all into a trade paperback. There's an endless amount of ways to make money from comic books if you're out to do it. If that is your goal, to make money in comics, you can do it. Comicsgate, that is our goal. Our goal is to get out there and compete and make money in this market. And so far, we're doing it. When I see people complain about how comics don't sell anymore, I just shake my head. How can you sell comics to people? People want comic books. You just have to identify your crowd, your audience, find your market, give them a reason to buy these comic books, and then boom, you're going to sell comic books. Why? What's the reason to buy? Because it's an ethical alternative to what's going on over at Marvel and DC. Because these comics look dynamite. They're not going to offend you. They're not going to insult you at all. They look cool. You can watch them actually get made on our YouTube channels. Comicsgate is a special phenomenon. Now, not to downplay anything that Thomas is saying. Thomas is at a different position in his career than I am, or even other Comicsgaters are. Which is right now, when you're just starting out, digital is your best option. It's almost free. You get your comic books out there. Eventually, people are going to see you and possibly say, hey, I want to take a chance on you. I want to actually pay you to produce comic books. Produce your comic book pages for money. But right now, digital and actually putting your comics up on the web just seems like a good way to kind of get noticed. I don't think it's the be-all, end-all. It's not what people want, ultimately. That is not the product that people want in comics. People do want to hold a comic book in their hands. People do want to be able to maybe hope that it's going to go up in value. Maybe buy 2 copies and sell one. People still want to do that. And it's ridiculous to not offer them that possibility, that alternative. From the start, from the outset, you have to identify all the different ways that people purchase and consume comic books. And then make sure that you've got it for them. And don't worry about the money is going to come. The money is absolutely going to come. As long as you are paying attention to the market, marketing your books properly, interacting with the fan base, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that the big companies are failing at right now. They're supporting 2 or 3 of their biggest projects and letting the other 47 books they put out every month just kind of flop around on the dock. And by the way, there are rules. Working at Marvel and DC, your social media, you're not actually supposed to be out there supporting your book the way that you want to. The book doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the company. There's no incentive for any of these professionals to get out there and actually support their own comic. They might get lectured by HR. It's a dying model. It's not going to work anymore. The direct market is poisonous at this point. And Marvel and DC, by the way, in extension of that, have no incentive, Nick. They have no incentive to stop putting out political propaganda as comics. They have no incentive to actually put out comics that are quality and good and sellable by the retailer. The retailer's the middleman. We're selling direct to the customers. When a copy of Cyberfrog is sold, it's sold already. It's sold to a reader. Marvel and DC are selling to a middleman who has to convince their buyers to purchase it, to pick it up.
Right.
And by the way, it's not returnable.
And they're offloading half of the marketing job to someone else. I mean, basically, like they're outsourcing that, but then reaping all of the reward because they pre-sell the product. So the next super chat, and this is the interesting one. You guys can give me feedback on this, and we might do it in a minute. It says, "Please get Cecil Says on the show." That's from Todd Rector, and fun. He is fun, and we might do that in just a little bit. Mike Angerhauser says, check out my horror show featuring Tim Lim. Lucifer Love Monkey says, how you doing, Caesar? So thank you for that. You can answer if you want after this one.
Hi. Good.
Oh, Custom Songmaker says, okay, sell somebody 2 variant covers digitally, lol. So
why would anyone buy variant covers at all, though? Aside from if you're doing it for charity.
Because there's a collector's market. And there are people who actually still collect comics.
Like stamps.
I have what did you say?
Like stamps.
Like stamps, maybe, but I think stamps, what is it called? Philatalism is going down. Philately.
Yeah.
It's not as popular as it used to be. But if you look behind me here, you can't see me. My camera's not on. I have a whole rack of comic books that I've collected. and they mean a lot to me. I think they're special, attractive items that look colorful. They look nice. I like to look at them. People feel that way about variant covers. They want to collect something special, something rare, something unique, and they want to just look at it. Why wouldn't we try to appeal to that market? I think it just makes sense. Now, on the other hand, it can be overdone. I think Marvel and DC at this point are propping up their failing sales using variant covers for absolutely everything. I think they've just had to come to a stop with that. I think they've had to put a stop to that. But almost every comic book has 50-50 variant covers. It's not even 1 in 10 anymore. It's 50-50. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
You were doing it less, though?
Yes, absolutely. Special events. Why? Because basically what those are is they're gifts to the retailer. If you're ordering 10 copies of this comic, you're going to get 1 special variant. Now, the retailer can pull that out, and he can make his money back for any of the unsold copies of the 10 that he bought by selling that 1 in 10 variant at a heightened price, at a higher price, if he wants to. That made sense. That was a good model. I mean, any way that you can give retailers incentive, ways to make a little bit more money that are of no cost to the publisher is a good idea. It's a good idea. Now, when you start doing 50-50, now you're getting greedy. Basically, you're asking every single reader, every single collector to buy the same issue twice because he doesn't know which variant cover is going to be more special. That is greedy. That's a bad idea. And that is one of these ways that these big 2 companies are tent poling up their terribly flagging sales. They have to keep things consistent as much as they can. I mean, even though comic sales are dropping percentage point by percentage point, every single month, the reason the floor hasn't dropped out on the comic book industry yet is because of all these little tricks. Let's cancel all of these books that aren't doing so well, and then we'll double ship the ones that are. Now they're going to be bi-weekly instead of just monthly. I mean, these are just ways to kind of just keep the numbers the same, staunch the bleeding, keep the appearance to be, that things are okay. Comicsgate doesn't need any of this. Comicsgate doesn't have these problems. We don't have these situations. We're releasing comics the way J.K. Rowling releases Harry Potter novels. It's a brand new model. It's brand new. It's twice. You get 2 Cyberfrog issues a year, and it's a big deal.
Okay, so
well, as far as variant covers, they've never really meant anything to me because I've never been a collector. I just preferred the content itself, so I didn't have any collector sort of value view of it. As if it's good for the shop, that's good, but for me, it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, I'm concerned about the retailers. And I'm trying to find a way to get Cyberfrog into retail shops in a meaningful way that'll actually help and support, retailers. Now that means hurdling over these SJWs that basically want to harass and coerce retailers to not carry our books for political reasons. They want to scare these guys away. So we have to figure out a way to get beyond these SJWs. These people at this moment we're utilizing zero pipeline distribution, which is straight from me to you. There is no middleman, but we have to use that middleman. Why? Because we care about the comic book industry. We want to make a difference. Our success needs to be spread around. We're just a few people. We're just a few creators. But how great would it be if All Caps Comics were in comic shops and we only were doing the things crowdfunded originally, so we have enough money to make these choices. We're safe to make these choices, but we're only doing these things that are going to benefit the retailers. That's important. That is something that we do need to find a way to do. Because without the retailers, the whole industry collapses. And we can keep doing what we're doing. We can keep selling our books directly to the fans.
The retail industry collapses. The comics industry would have to essentially be reborn if that happened.
Well, that would be the end of Diamond.
There would still be something new out of it.
What makes you think that?
Well, because people will just buy the comics directly from the person, not even print. They would just click and buy it.
There would still need to be some sort of method of distribution. And frankly, I'm not sure that enough people are ready to click and buy a $3 item and have it shipped via the Amazon method. That just doesn't seem to work. That is why our comic books...
Though.
What's that?
That's if it's print.
It's got to be print. People are telling you they want printed comics. They're willing, in some cases, they're willing to settle for digital.
No.
Oh,
people
my
want
mistake.
digital comics too. The generation growing up reading comics right now is not reading superhero comics. They're reading manga, and most of them are pirating it.
We don't disagree. I agree with you. That's a serious problem that comics has, is that the younger generation is still reading manga. Okay, these young girls that go to comic conventions and cosplay, they're all reading manga. They're not reading superhero comics. So why are we trying to make superhero comics for them? The superhero comic book audience is 30 years old to 65 years old, maybe older than that, maybe 70 years old. That's a nice window of time. That is still an audience. That is an audience that you can continue to market and sell to for the next 20 or 30 years. Why are you pissing them? Why do these SJWs want to piss these people off?
But at the same time, do you have any plans to even compete with what the new generation's reading? I mean, you don't have to.
I'm not a manga.
As you said, you don't have to. But at the same time, that is something to consider. Because if you could, that phantom audience that's supposedly waiting to come back to comics, there's a lot of them who didn't wait at all. They just left. And they're reading manga too, or webcomics, or whatever else they can see.
Right. Well, but I think the question is, who cares? Because there is still an existing superhero comics market that can fit all of the Comicsgate artists plus any other number of artists. Like we haven't reached market saturation for superhero comics as long as they're done well, and that's what Comicsgate, in my opinion, is showing. I don't know if you disagree with that or not, but you've got, like, right now, Comicsgate is showing that, and this is something I want to talk about a lot more as we move, as not in this stream, on my channel in general, is how cultivating microcosmic communities will allow creators to serve markets and still remain extremely profitable. Comicsgate, these guys, Ethan, if you could share, how many copies of Cyberfrog have you been selling?
Right now, we're at 14,000 copies of a $25 comic book, and I will tell you that's extraordinary. We are just a hair for the month under Batman Metal as a trade paperback. So we would be vying for the #1 spot in terms of price point in comics right now, only beaten by Batman Metal. That's extraordinary. That's now. But that is just initially, that is the first draft of this project. That is the premier chromium cover, autographed special edition. The thing to do is to take this comic book, which is actually this and the little ash can, the mini comic that it comes with, will be broken down into 3 22-page issues. So I'm going to re-release the same story as Cyberfrogs 1 through 3 through the direct market. I got 3 issues already done that are going to go for between $4 and $5 a piece cover price. Slightly more expensive than Marvel and DC. I expect a lower print run.
Right. And so, but my point in all that is, so 14,000 copies is not a ton of copies, but it's extremely profitable because one, it's your time. Like you said, the cost per book is not astronomical. It's very accessible, and with the crowdfunding model, it allows you to quickly assess how big your market exposure is, because you simply have the people pre-ordering the book. So I'm not sure that the manga argument is all that interesting, because manga and Comicsgate can coexist. But
they don't want to, though.
Says who? Can you elaborate on that?
I've seen a lot of people in Comicsgate, and they don't all speak for each other. I used to subscribe to Diversity in Comics, and he would pretty much say almost nothing positive about any manga or digital comics. It seemed to be more about how it had to be physical or else it didn't exist. And then a lot of people replying to him or in comments would would agree that it pretty much wasn't a real comic unless it was print.
Okay. So what's the problem with people having...
And a lot of people read manga digitally, usually without paying for it, because there's a lot of websites there's a lot of avenues for people to just have it posted and in front of them right then and there, and read about it and talk about it through image boards or whatever.
Okay, so I want to address that in just a second. I've got a couple chats real quick. Cecil is love from Bagel Goose. Thank you very much. Jack Cash says, I hate digital comics, print for the win. And Custom Songmaker says,
that's pretty much what I was talking about.
Right. And Custom Songmaker says, without retailers, there's no gathering place, discussion, community, no word of mouth, no human connection.
No.
Censored tweets and subreddits aren't
That's
friends.
definitely not true.
And that's fine that you can disagree with that. But what I think the problem you might be running into is that you have a market telling you what they want, and you're telling the market that they're not correct.
It's not quite that. It's that there's the old market, and they want what they want, and they're going for it, and they can have that. But there's a lot of changes, and the new generations of people reading comics, as well as what we were talking about last time about the idea of comics, the idea of the medium, that comics are actually bigger than they've ever been, just not in a pay way, the way that every meme or image macro you see, or people just posting little scribbles or doodles to post on social media, Facebook, Gab, Twitter, image boards, all that stuff. People do that constantly. Every single day, new comics are being made, but that's not part of the business. So, and that's my argument. Essentially, is not for the business side. It's more about the medium itself, and the medium of comics is bigger than it's ever been in history, but only in these weird little sort of isolated individual use kind of ways. And there's no way to monetize most of that, and there really shouldn't be. But at the same time, that's how a lot of people are reading comics today. And as far as manga goes, people sort of see it the same way, but also manga is out competing because it's giving newer generations of comics readers what they want in a way that they probably didn't even realize. And when they read that, like, who's going to put down Berserk to go read Jawbreakers, really? And the answer to that is a very small portion that just wants to, sort of go through their nostalgia and just read only print. It has to be something that they can only hold in their hands. And if it's not that, then it's satanic. Well, I mean, the way I see it is that all forms of comics should be embraced as part of the medium, and that it doesn't matter how you read it, if it's print or digital or a scribble or anything. It should be about the content itself, and that's how I feel. And that doesn't fly in the face of superhero comics being crowdfunded. In fact, if anything, it supports it. But I also think, there was a lot of stuff we went over last time that almost just skips my mind. But it was about the idea of how the medium itself should sink or swim on its own merits. And right now, manga is kind of eating the lunch of the American industry. And it's not just because social justice. Social justice is just the vultures feeding off the corpse. And I think it would be best if the corpse was buried and something new came out instead. And that's sort of what's already happening. But at the same time, the people who are now growing up reading digital comics, reading off of websites, are you going to compete for their attention? And if you're going to if you're trying to make superhero comic throwbacks, you're really not going to grab their attention. They're not going to put down One Punch Man to read, my indie take on Batman.
Okay, so Ethan, did you want to respond to that? Otherwise, I have kind of a direction shift on talking about what Comicsgate actually is, but I want to give you a moment to respond if you want.
I have no response. It was pretty incoherent. I don't know what he's talking about. We don't have an argument. I'm not against manga's existence. I hope it continues. I realize Manga is a much bigger market than what I'm doing, what I'm pursuing. But I still believe that my market, and clearly it is, by looking for the audience that I've targeted, I'm still going to make a lot of money. I'm still going to sell a lot of Cyberfrog comics. So I'm not really worried. I'm not enviously looking at manga. They don't want what I have, and that's okay. Maybe some of them will, maybe not. But I mean, there's a big enough audience here that as long as I give them what I think they want, and they do agree that this is what they want, I'm going to do just fine. So that's fine. Nick, I guess take it from.
Yeah, well, to summarize your rebuttal, a lot of people drive Toyota Corollas, but Dodge still makes a Hellcat, right? Like, you can buy a 700 horsepower vehicle to go 200 miles an hour, even though the vast majority of people just need a car with good fuel economy and safety rating. You know, like that's, to me, that's where this argument is going. Sure, a lot of people buy manga. A lot of people buy a lot of things that aren't superhero comics, but there is a market for superhero comics that is clearly thriving. People are enjoying it, and I don't understand specifically what the criticism of that is. So let me read 3 quick super chats, and then I want to talk a little bit. I want to get both of your opinions on what Comicsgate is / should be in just a moment. Matt Becker says, I can't believe I was looking forward to this. Well, I'm happy to let you down, buddy. Marsupial Gamer says, so if most online manga is pirated or not able to be monetized, how is that a viable market? It can't compete if creators can't make a living. Alan Rogers says, nobody outside your hentai Discord wants to read manga. So what I want to talk about, though, or hear you guys' opinions on, because this is one of the big questions I have.
I could address the super chats, but I mean, we can move on too.
You might find a way to address them in your answers here, but let's is Comicsgate a top-down movement? Like in Ethan, you're referred to as Ceasar. This came up kind of during the Vox Day thing. Like, who is the leader of Comicsgate? Is there a leader of Comicsgate? In our discussion, you were saying basically Comicsgate is for people who want to jump into the movement. But if the movement, or is the movement bottom up enough to be to allow people to jump in, or is it top down? And so, Ethan, if you could start off with that, and then I'll let Thomas respond.
Yeah, it's hard to respond to that realistically. Here's the advantage that I offer. I mean, I've become kind of the Johnny Carson of Comicsgate, more so than they call me Ceasar because a bunch of Comicsgaters tried to knife me in the back altogether. They had a plan; it didn't go so well, so I got the moniker Ceasar, which is funny.
So you're Mark Anthony then. You lived through it.
Yeah, that's correct. I survived. I did survive. So I guess I wouldn't be Julius Caesar. But yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I mean, here's the advantage. I think trying to get the attention of any one of the bigger YouTubers right now from the ground up would be the best plan. But really what Comicsgate recommends is that you find your own audience and you build your own platform. And that takes time. I mean, I started out on YouTube with 54 subscribers last October. So, 11 months ago, and build up to 77 now. I'm at nearly 78,000 right now. And that took a year. That took hard work, building an audience, providing content every single day. I made a video every single day. And then gradually built towards producing my comic book. Now, I already have this audience, and I have a show that I call Comicsgate Live. And if your work is really exceptional and you are an interesting human being, I want you to come on this show. I'll promote your comic, and I think you'll do better. You'll do better than other people will. But being Comicsgate is just a matter of principle. I mean, that's all you have to do is say you're Comicsgate. All you have to do to get on Comicsgate Live is be talented and funny or interesting. So that's the thing. I don't know if it's top down. There is no leader of Comicsgate. I am the leader of All Caps Comics. I am the leader of Cyberfrog. Everyone who takes the initiative to either support or create for or be a part of Comicsgate is a leader of Comicsgate.
All right, and Thomas, your response. What is Comicsgate to you from an outside perspective, from the out group?
I guess from the out group, it's a popularity contest. It's mostly based around e-celebs. And whatever the e-celebs say is the dogma.
Well, that's mainstream comics as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not about
that's why I
e-celebs,
don't
it's
like
about-
either one now.
But that's
And
like,
I've been told that because of, you know, whatever, if I say I'm Comicsgate, people are going to tell me, no, you're not, because you don't want to buy print comics over digital. If
No,
I
you
prefer to buy digital, I've been told from others that I'm not supposed to be a part of Comicsgate, and that I shouldn't even actually be on with you because of that.
all right. Well, here you are. You're very brave for being on with me. That's very principled of you. You don't have to print to be Comicsgate. You don't even have to create comics to be Comicsgate. If it's what you
Certainly shouldn't
believe
have
in.
to.
No, if it's what you believe in, you're Comicsgate. We have fans. We have customers that are out there plugging away that do their voices on YouTube. I mean, they have YouTube channels. They criticize comics. They talk about what they want to see more of comics and then less of in comics. We have people who just want to support the comics and be in the audience and watch the shows and just proudly wear the T-shirts and all that. They're Comicsgate too. It wouldn't matter if any of them decided to produce a digital comic or a paper comic. Comicsgate, being Comicsgate is in your heart. It's a principled stance that you've taken against the far left-wing takeover, hostile takeover in comics. That's all it is. Now, if you want to produce a comic beyond that, that's terrific. Good for you. You should do that. You should follow the principles of Comicsgate and produce a comic either digitally or on paper. But it doesn't matter if you do or don't. That's not a question of whether or not
I've been told it matters. I mean, those are nice platitudes, but I've been told the exact opposite.
I don't know who's telling you these things.
People in Comicsgate. I'll say something about, hey, here's what I think is wrong, and I'll tag it in Comicsgate, and people say that I'm trying to troll, or that, which, you know, isn't necessarily untrue. But, but at the same time, what does it matter if it's true or not? Am I your enemy because I say the truth?
well, I think one of the big questions would be, is it true? And I'm not saying it's necessarily not true, because I can't respond to specific criticisms personally. And of course, I'm outside of all of this as someone who is just getting back into the comic buying industry. But you know, if you read this chat that's happening, there are a lot of people who are flatly saying you're wrong. And they're not just saying you're wrong because we don't like you. They're saying you're wrong because the stats don't match up. Like you're talking about manga being this great, huge market, but then there are people talking about manga being down 20% as well from its peak back in 2008, for example, was one of the stats people threw out. But, you know,
that's a percentage. Down 20% still means it's selling in the millions in Japan.
Well, yeah.
So they're avoiding numbers. They're avoiding numbers to say I'm wrong, so that they can say, see, you're wrong. It's down 20%. 20% of what they won't say.
But I mean, the question in that, to push back, the question there would be, okay, so movies are outselling comics or outdoing comics as an industry. Movies are down 20%, so people are less watching movies. It's like, yeah, but movies are still killing comics. Okay, but what does that have to do with Comicsgate? Because Comicsgate isn't making movies. If Comicsgate isn't making manga and doesn't want to make manga, and
manga
the fans
is comics still. It's a comic. It's just
right.
not the American industry. If the argument is the industry, then yeah, that's the focus. But my focus is the entire medium. And American readers are going to other countries to read comics. And American comics can keep doing the stuff that they were already doing. But at some point, if you want to get the younger readers, the newer readers who are growing up under a completely different market, under a completely different concept, you're going to have to at least consider what they want.
All right. Ethan, did you want to respond? Otherwise, I got a couple of super chats to read.
No.
And then okay. And then I'll read them, and then I will bring in. I'm gonna bring in Cecil and see what he has to say about it. Okay, so the super chats are from Jake Cash. Sorry, Jake. It says, "You do you. I like physical and don't enjoy Kindle." Custom Songmaker says, "You got to read this." This is a quote. "You got to read this new comic series I bought digitally. Here, borrow my phone for 2 days to read them. Tweet me if anybody calls my phone." Homesteadov says, "Would comics do better if Diamond was broken up?" And that's a question. I want to read these last two, but then I would actually like, I'm curious about that from your perspective, Ethan. Sierra Whiskey says, "As a consumer, I'm the leader of Comicsgate," which is kind of in line with what Ethan was saying. Integer Spin says, "The reason manga is so popular is it's designed for the average guy to buy from newsstands in Japan. Marvel and DC don't want average Joe reader." So, Ethan, could you talk about Diamond breaking up? Would comics be better if Diamond was dead and buried?
It's hard to say because it is a monopoly right now. It's like, would Tony Stark be better off without that metal heart beating in his chest? Well, it'd be better if it would be better if it was a real heart. But I mean, pulling that out of his chest right now is keeping him alive. Diamond is a monopoly. I don't know how to replace Diamond. I don't know how to break it up. I don't know what to do. I don't know how you add competition at this point when all competition has been destroyed. I think that the answer is simply it's not on Diamond. It's on the other companies. It's on the comic book companies. The comic book companies have to get away from the current direct model that was established in the early 1970s and actually change things so that it's direct, but with a little bit of newsstand. These books do need to be returnable, and I think if the books are returnable again, people who if books that do not sell are returned for a buyback for their money back, I think you're going to see some serious changes in the way Marvel and DC approach talent, approach the fans, approach the distribution of these comics. I think everything would change for the better, and then. I guess we could enter. I mean, I would like to see something like Reader Link come in and work with comics to break up the direct market so that maybe Diamond can have just the direct market to comic book specialty shops, but Reader Link comes in and starts to distribute to Target and Walmart and all of these other companies. I mean, that would Five Below, the dollar store. Let's get comics where people actually find them, where people actually go. I think that would be a good move.
Sounds good. I'm gonna bring in Cecil here whenever he wants to jump on. Cecil, go ahead and he's in. He's in. Welcome, Cecil.
Hello.
So you've been listening to this. What? Give me a hot take, buddy.
The hot take is this guy doesn't know economics at all. If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Cecil, I love when Cecil does stuff like that. Cecil, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming in here. Me and Nick are suffering right now, and Nick doesn't want to say anything. We're both excessively polite gentlemen,
right.
And you're not.
He's doing a business model where he says 90% of the people who are consumers of it steal it online and do it in chat rooms. And I'm
not saying that's what the business model is. I'm saying that's what people are doing.
How do you make money?
I'm not saying
he wants to be recognized as
people are doing that.
Yeah, he wants to be recognized as art. He wants to be just as valid as anyone else because he's doing webcomics, and that's what the younger people are doing.
That's what people are doing.
Okay, but I'm asking you, what is your plan to make money, to put food on the table?
Well, as far as making comics is pretty much what I've already said. The way that Ethan's doing it, I think, is the right thing to do. I started off saying,
what the hell are we arguing about?
Yeah, we're not arguing about that.
Okay. Glad I could clear that up.
Okay.
Thank you, Cecil.
Somebody told me that Thomas basically wanted to promote his book. Everyone said, "Don't debate Thomas."
I want to do that.
He's here.
That's not a bad idea.
Comic.
You remember how to find that on Indiegogo?
Go ahead, say it.
It'll be if you search literally on Indiegogo, it should be the result after thick strip.
But you understand that your performance here tonight is not exactly inspiring the 573 people that are in the audience to go seek out your book.
I fully understand that. I understand
What's
that
the other
it's
one
not
called?
good
Thick strip?
for self-promotion to say anything negative about Comicsgate or about
No,
the print
wrong,
industry at all.
wrong. I will bet you that half of the people in here, in the audience, want to see you tear me apart. I think a lot of people came in here hoping that you would do very, very well and you would have a cogent debate, a cogent argument against
I didn't want to
Comicsgate,
speak
and
over
they're
you
very
either.
disappointed. They're very disappointed. It does seem like you came in here just kind of poking around at the edges, nibbling at the edges of an argument in order to promote your own webcomic. You've been
It's not
making
a
weird
webcomic,
noises
though. It's
into the.
just a
Okay, you've been
release.
making weird noises into the microphone. You interrupt.
Am I breathing into the microphone?
No, you're going
Am I
like this.
making lip
I'm
smacking
hearing
noises?
into the microphone when I'm talking. I'm hearing
No,
stuff
that's
like
my
that.
normal nose. You know what I was going to do is turn my mic to the side. I can't
All right.
hear.
Snore-
I
it
can't
was
hear the
snoring.
noises that are going on into the mic.
Yeah, people really want to hear like a good argument because there are a lot of
Well, a
people.
lot of the arguments I had, I went over last time, and I'm not trying to remember them. It's a little iffy, but at the same time, I'm not going to speak over you all the time.
But
at least.
you have. I
A
you
couple
notice
times.
people are saying, "I've never heard Ethan be this quiet." I'm letting you talk. I'm letting you talk, and
Are they
when
joking?
I talk, you again, you interrupt me. You know, it's like so.
You went on for like 15 minutes last time.
Yeah, but hold on just a second, because you know, this is where I get to step in as moderator. Both of you have had long periods of talking, and you know, if either one of you has the perception that the other stepped on them, that's a valid perception. I think there's been a little bit of interruption here and there, but largely Ethan has let you talk quite a bit. You're the one who called for the critical challenge here, so I think. You know, when he's giving
I
you this
I
much,
brought it. I have not brought it much tonight.
You've got tons of people in here. They're like, Ethan, you're fat. Try to argue that. You've got all these people that are on your side that are hoping. They're like, oh my God, Thomas, please.
But fat isn't an argument. I mean, I could just say fat cunt, fat cunt, fat cunt, fat cunt, fat cunt, fat cunt.
Well,
fat, but I'm not going to do that.
Well, okay. So here was there was an interesting. There was an interesting.
Thomas, I'm sorry if I could break in. Thomas, when you put in literally, when you put in, sorry, Nick, when you put in literally into Indiegogo, what comes up?
Thick Strip was the first result when I searched a couple days ago.
Is that a comic as well?
No, it is not. It's just some stripper whores.
That sounds good. I'm going to back that.
It has more money than we do so far, so it's doing pretty good.
So I just typed in literally to get that?
Yeah, just type in the word literally on Indiegogo.
Okay.
Okay, so but Thomas, one of your criticisms was that people were telling you that you can't be in Comicsgate, and someone pointed out, just because someone tells you you can't be in Comicsgate, like who are they?
Yeah, no one has to tell me that I am or that I'm not. But at the same time, I don't feel that the values that I have are really the same thing. I don't want to buy print comics. I don't want to have some guy ship me a comic because I don't really care that much about holding it physically. I just care about the content if it's good itself.
But do they have to?
I think people are telling him he can't be in Comicsgate just because he's an idiot.
Thanks, Ethan.
We'll let that hang in the air.
That was Cecil.
Yeah.
No, you're acting like somebody. If somebody you're having a conversation with someone about football, and you go, "I don't like going to stadiums," and they go, "Well, then you're not allowed to be a football fan." And then you go,
that's
okay,
pretty much what it's like.
Yeah. So what go? Fuck you. I'm still in Comicsgate. Fuck you. I'm still a football fan.
That's what I told them. And they get
so then what do you
pretty upset about that.
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, and that's
it's funny. So there's that.
But that's what
that was pretty much our old game back in the old Sh y Webcomics days. Was that we would look for any sensitive target, but at the same time, we wouldn't just hit something because it was iffy. We would just look for something that was really bad. My memory tonight on it is fuzzy too, because it's like I don't know, drinking already.
Sure. Let me hit a couple super chats real quick. Django Manco says anonymous sources, hashtag CNN hire Thomas. Mark C says this is a new movement. There is a female manga creator within Comicsgate. Many offer digital. You have to give this thing time. Maybe manga will come. Maybe it won't. ZZ says make Cyberfrog an ebook. I want it free. Frog, 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 frog. Snark.com didn't say anything, but thank you very much, Snark. And Andrew Rattan says Thomas has a tone of voice that seems aggressive. And then Tillip says someone who likes movies watches, someone who loves movies collects. Sounds like Thomas only likes comics.
Yeah, see, that's another part, is that people tell me that I don't actually like comics unless I read the comics that they say I'm supposed to read. And that is technically another form of gatekeeping. Not that I really care about gatekeeping, because it's like, you know, if I want to say I'm Comicsgate or not, it's not up to them. But the thing is that I don't really think that the whole values of Comicsgate are the same as how I feel.
Okay,
Cecil, how's Cash Grab coming, Cecil? How's it going?
Cash Grab is coming. Got about almost half of it already written, and Tim's about to start drawing.
That's why Tim Lim is important. I mean, Tim Lim is doing this book Cash Grab with Cecil and Nurkish that is absolutely hilarious. It satirizes what's going on with Comicsgate. All of the big Comicsgaters are in it. Who gets murdered? Is it Zach that gets murdered in the book?
It is Zach. Zach is the victim, and me and Nurkish are running the name of the city that everybody lives in on both sides. Anti-Comicsgate people and pro-Comicsgate people all live in the city of Comicsgate. And
it's killed in the comic.
And me and Nurkish are running down all the usual suspects. You're a suspect as well in it, Ethan.
Yeah, of course. But I'm unlikely. I probably wouldn't kill Zach. Not. I would have by now. I would have killed him by now if I was going to.
So, yeah. I want to get back to something, because this is what I think has been missed. No. I think you'll appreciate this.
I wish I had ketamine on me.
I wish
you did too.
I think this is what Thomas has missed in all of this, is that Comicsgate, and this is what you said to me, Ethan, when we did our interview. You said Comicsgate is a set of values, and those values are listen to your build a fan base is the best way to do it. Build a fan base, listen to that fan base, treat that fan base well, court them, and provide them a product they want to buy. And Thomas, I mean, what I'm hearing,
I'm against that. I'm not against build a fan base and be respectful to the fans.
But what I think the problem that you've been having, and what's been kind of on display here, is that rather than courting fans, you're telling fans that they should be courting you in the way that you want to be courted. And like, from a business perspective, that just isn't going to work. Like,
it's not necessarily that,
because
it can be seen as that way. But the thing is, what I think is, and I'm again not pro here, so I'm not the I'm not the veteran who knows about interacting with the fans and that kind of thing. The way I just see it is that the original core first value I always thought was freedom of speech first, and that social justice is antithetical to free speech because social justice is inherently censorship. And so that was my first value when I thought about what Comicsgate should be. And my point is, that's what I think. Not that's what I think Comicsgate should be. That's just what I think.
Sure.
Well, let me tell you really quick. I mean, the principles of Comicsgate that you listed aren't really the principles. I mean, that's how to be a Comicsgate. That's how to be a Comicsgate professional and appeal to the market. The Comicsgate principles, Comicsgate really is a consumer-driven uprising, and it's what they demand of people. It's what they demand of their entertainment. Now, what I've done, but what you've just listed, is how a comic book professional can adhere to those demands and be successful marketing to that audience. But it really is all about the fans. It's always about the fans. The fans have made us incredibly, incredibly successful. For that, we love you. Those of you in the audience who are supporters of Cyberfrog or any Comicsgate book, I'm extremely grateful for everything that you've done in making this a success, and hope I can keep you on for future books. Cecil and Nurkish's Cash Grab, I promise you, is going to be so much fun. I think it might be one of our best-selling projects. I think he's going to do great. So thank you everyone who came out tonight. Thank you, Nick, for having us on. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yes, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Thank you, Thomas, for coming in and voicing your opinion as well. Cecil, thanks for coming in and offering your opinion at the end. I have 2 quick super chats, and then we'll wrap up the stream. Todd 3 now. Todd Rector says, "Get rid of the soy boy." John Whalen says, "Thomas is like a new gender in comics." And Andrew Rattan says, "Cecil, can you do me a favor and leave the sit up?"
I don't know what that means, but okay.
I don't either. You should definitely do that, though. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being on with me too, Ethan, and thank you, Nick.
My pleasure, Thomas. Good luck to you. I hope your book does great.
All right, thank you.
And I'll have links to all the books in the description. Thanks, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.